Good morning, everyone. My name is Imran Desai. Welcome, everyone, to our Chicago Health Club Tableau User Group virtual meeting. The purpose of the Chicago Healthcare Tableau User Group is to share the knowledge, tips, and tricks and connect with other Tableau users in Greater Chicago area specific to healthcare industry. Whether you are a beginner or a wizard or just a curious, you are welcome here. Um, so my name is Imran Desai. I work with Rush University Medical Center as a senior data analyst. Um, and Kelly, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hello, I'm Kelly Sims. I'm part of the leadership group of this TUG. I'm a healthcare analyst at the Lake County Health Department. And today we have an awesome schedule for you. First up is Jessica Lella from Tableau, and I'll hand it over to her to talk about her the Tableau AI and machine learning in the market, use cases, and demos. So take it away, Jessica.
Awesome. Thank you, Kelly. All right, I'm going to go ahead, share my screen here, and we can get going. All right. So again, welcome everyone to our first session, and we are focusing on artificial intelligence and machine learning. We're going to talk about, what is it, the market, use cases, and then of course, demos and how AI is being integrated into the Tableau platform. But before we get there, let me introduce myself. My name's Jess Lella. I'm a solutions engineer here at Tableau. I've been here for about 4 or 5 years. And what a solutions engineer does at Tableau is we help customers get started with Tableau, use it efficiently. I also do a lot of enablement like this. If you've ever joined some of our healthcare marketing events like the Pulse series, you've probably heard my voice before. And I am aligned to the healthcare and life sciences vertical. So everything you're going to see today does have that HLS spin to it. Also, a little note as we get going here. If you guys have a question, we're going to have some time for questions at the end. But if you want to throw it into the chat as it comes to mind, feel free to do it. I'll see it in the top corner, and I'll try to address it as we go. But if not, I'll definitely see those questions at the end. Okay, you're going to see some things that are in beta, not quite released. So I'll just put up our forward-looking statement for that. And without further ado, let's jump into this. So before we get started, let's talk about what is AI and ML. It's a big buzzword right now. We're hearing about it more and more, and we're also using it pretty good chance every single day without realizing it, both professionally and in our personal lives. So I like to think of AI as, imagine you get your most brilliant data scientists all into a room and they're answering all of your questions instantaneously. Wouldn't that be a great scenario? But that's not a real life, scalable way to do our business. So we're seeing that AI is getting embedded and integrated in our BI platforms, in our everyday lives, so we can make those efficient decisions quickly and easily. And that's what you're going to see today in the demos. And again, these aspects of AI, it's every day when you're texting and it autofills emails and it's finishing your sentence. When you go to Netflix and you see a show's recommended, you ask Siri, where's the closest gas station? That's all AI. We're using it, it's integrated into our lives, and we're seeing the same as in our business intelligence platform like Tableau. So what exactly is AI? Really simple terms. We're not going to break down the intricacies of these models, but think of it like these programs built in, let's say Python. I know that's a very, very common language that we build these algorithms that thinks like a person. It can mimic, that human perception. It can understand and respond to language, solve problems, answer questions. And what's really powerful is it learns on its own. So we're not having a programmer come in every day and tweak it. That's just happening in the background. And that's how we're able to integrate AI into Tableau. Just a quick note about the market. Obviously not a surprise that the growth here is exponential. So as business workers, knowledge workers, data workers that we all are here, it is in our best interest to at least understand it, know when we're using it, and think about how we could bring this into our workflows. So that's really the purpose of today's session is, to demo some of these aspects of AI. Maybe you guys will see some things that you haven't seen before, and we'll also explain what's going on behind the scenes that makes this artificial intelligence. So we're going to do 3 separate demos today on across the different platforms. We're going to talk about Tableau CRM. I'm going to introduce that. We're going to do a Tableau server demo where we're going to use Ask Data, Explain Data, and natural language generation. And then we're going to end in Tableau Desktop with a clustering and forecasting demo. So a lot to cover. Apologies if I go a little fast. I have a tendency to do that when we have a lot to get through. But again, feel free to ask questions as we go. But this is not all a comprehensive list, everything we're going to see today in the demos. There's AI, in a lot of other areas of Tableau and Tableau Prep. If anyone's used fuzzy matching logic to clean up some of your fields, or the recommendations in Tableau Prep, recommended data sources, using your R and Python scripts or MATLAB scripts in Tableau with TabPy and RServe. That's been around for some time, not new, but just be aware that that is also bringing AI to Tableau as well. All right, so we're going to start with Tableau CRM. I'd love if anybody would want to chime in on the chat if they're using Tableau CRM or at least heard about it. I do realize this is probably new for a lot of us. So I will give a intro. We're going to do a demo. And my goal here is, even if you've never heard of Tableau CRM, you're going to come away from this with a good understanding of what it is and how you would use it. And I do want to be sensitive that I know this is, may not seem relevant at first to everyone, but you are just going to keep hearing more and more about it. And this was a game-changing moment, really, for machine learning and Tableau when we brought in Tableau CRM. So if you're wondering, what am I talking about here with this Tableau CRM? Let's jump into it. So if anyone went to conference last fall, you probably most definitely heard about Tableau CRM. So what is it? Well, when Tableau got acquired by Salesforce, Salesforce already had an analytics arm called Einstein Analytics. We since merged, became one, and revamped as Tableau CRM. And Tableau CRM is that area of machine learning where the everyday user, someone like myself, I'm not a programmer, not a data scientist, but I can create these models with clicks, not code. Load my data, run through a quick wizard, and boom, I get my insights, my predictions, my recommendations. Now, if you guys are still wondering, what are you talking about here? I promise this is all going to make sense when we jump into the demo. We're not going to really talk about, creating the model in Salesforce. It's a whole nother, talk track, and we could spend a whole hour there. That's not the purpose of today. The purpose today is to really think about how do we bring those models easily and quickly into Tableau, which you're going to see in just a minute here. So think about this like having, some people like to say it's like having your own personal data scientist. Just like Tableau democratizes data where the everyday business user can create these beautiful dashboards, well, Tableau CRM lets the everyday business user create machine learning models and use them and interpret them very easily. But again, we're going to focus on how we bring that into Tableau. So in our upcoming release coming out very soon in 21.1, you're going to see that we can bring in these Einstein discovery models very easily and interact with them in your dashboards. That's what you're going to see in the demo in just a couple seconds here. But before we get there, it always helps to think about some use cases. How are other customers using Tableau CRM for their use cases? So I'm not going to read them all right here. I think they're pretty self-explanatory, but we're going to be doing an on-time delivery demo for today. But one that we've been hearing about recently, we've helped some customers implement that's very relevant, especially in healthcare with COVID, is that clinician burnout rate or employee satisfaction scores How can we take, all of our data, predict from past behavior, what's the correlation? What are those fields? What are those, attributes that are contributing to a burnout rate? When are certain nurses, for example, at that tipping point so we can intervene early and be more proactive versus reactive, for example? So this is just a couple ideas. There's really tip of the iceberg. There's so much you can do with Tableau CRM. So without further talking and slides, let's do a demo. All right, so we're going to be looking at vaccine on-time delivery. So we're looking at vaccines, but you could also relate this to medical devices delivering on time, therapies being delivered on time, retail. So this could be agnostic, but we're going to look at it in the scope of vaccines because, well, pretty relevant topic right now, right? All right, so I am in Tableau Desktop. Got my dashboard, and this is a pretty simple dashboard, just telling me, what are my orders, what are my shippers, my freight forwarders, and how much money, are our contracts worth to get these vaccines shipped on time. So, this should look familiar to most of us. Pretty simple dashboard, interactive. I can see, how much are we shipping with each freight forwarder, to which part of the country, is weather a factor, and whatnot. But wouldn't it be great to see, well, are these vaccines going to get delivered on time? I don't have visibility into that. And to predict that, I'd have to make a model or some sort of advanced calculation, bring in TabPy or R. Well, not many of us have that skill set. So let's see how we can bring in a model that's made in Tableau CRM right to this dashboard. And we do that with the help of extensions. So everything you're seeing right now is 21.1, set to be released hopefully any day now. So I'm going to bring in my extension. Again, extensions are not new, but we do have a new interface. So you're seeing a little what's new and what's coming already in this demo. We're going to select this Einstein Discovery extension. That's how we bring our Tableau CRM models into Tableau. And then we need to configure the extension. Now this part always takes a couple seconds to load. We'll give it a second. It's basically reading back to that model that was built in Salesforce. I'll give you a peek of what that looks like. And we're in business. So I choose, well, which model? I only have 4. Pretty obvious which one we need to choose. On-time delivery. Which workbook are we working with? And then we just map our fields. So the data, we created the model. It's going to pretty much automatically map. So again, this is when the model was created in Tableau CRM, which I'm going to show you what that looks like in just a second. But if any are missing fields, it's usually pretty easy to just fill them in. We'll say next. This is a percentage, so we'll just make it pretty easy for us to understand that. And that is all there is to it. So now our extension is grabbing the information from that model, reading it back, and it's going to output a percentage prediction for me in just a couple seconds here. I know it's going a little slower with the Zoom and everything, but it will load. There we go. All right, so as an aggregate, there's about a 43% chance that our vaccines will make it on time. That's not a great number. Let's take a look at how this interacts with our dashboard. So if we ship a lot with NMotion, this freight forwarder, what does that look like? Wow, 26%. So they might be a cheaper logistics provider, but it's also costing us for our delivery to get there in time, which we're talking about vaccines, that can be the difference of people's lives. So we might want to think about choosing a different freight forwarder. We ship a lot to the Southwest. Okay, that only gives us 24% on time prediction. So again, this model was made in Tableau CRM, but as an everyday Tableau user, all I had to do was drag in that extension, configure it, pretty self-explanatory, and now it's interacting with my dashboard. But let's take it one step further. Sorry, guys. Let's look at individual orders and take this from just, okay, I have this prediction, that's great, but how can I then take action and fix this? So not only do we get predictions, I'm trying to find one that has a low prediction rate. Okay, 10%, that's a good one. So this order here, going to the Southwest with NMotion, has a 10% likelihood to make it on time. Well, what else we can do with predictions and Tableau CRM is it also tells us why this has a low predicted delivery on time. And it also tells us how we can improve this. It recommends improvements we can make to get this order on time. So let's take a look at a what if scenario. And again, a lot of this I'm showing you guys like the what's possible with a little more work. Obviously, we're not going to be able to build all this out on the fly right now, but we can take these predictions, put them into our data source. And now this what if scenario, let's take the recommendation here, USP. Let's maybe get that distance class to 2, so a little closer. And wow, that gets us to 30%. What happens when we get it to a distance class of 2? 5 being the farthest, so 2 should definitely help us well. Gets us to 60%. So in just a couple seconds here, we were able to use a prediction built in Tableau CRM. And we're then able to take it from, okay, we have a problem to how can I fix this? Well, pretty easy fix here. We just need to change our freight forwarder. All right, let's talk about one more thing with how we can do in Tableau CRM, and then we will move on to Tableau Server. All right, so some of you are probably wondering, all right, well, that seems simple enough. You brought on your extension, but where's this model coming from? Where are you building it? How are you going from this extension to Tableau, and there's this whole Salesforce piece. So let's briefly talk about that too. And I am going to clarify some questions that we normally get. So again, this is being built in Salesforce. So yes, you do need a separate license. So just because you have Tableau doesn't mean you have Tableau CRM. We can talk about that at the end. So you build your models here in Analytics Studio, Tableau CRM Analytics Studio. So there's those 4 predictions that we just looked at when we built the extension. And we can do one more thing that I wanted to show you guys, which is we can bring in that model as a calculation. So we can use Einstein calculations in Tableau. So maybe I don't want to necessarily have, or I want both. I want my extension here, but then I also want to enrich my data with this prediction. I can bring that in like a calculation, just like if anyone's done those TabPy scripts, or if anyone's done the predictive modeling scripts, it's these functions here. Again, not new, but that's what we're leveraging to bring in those Einstein calculations. I might need to do just a quick fix here, which I'm not going to bore you guys with. I've got some underscores. So what does that calculation look like when I fix that? Looks like this. Same thing. I should really rename that. And now I can use this prediction just like I would any other calculation I make. So maybe, I'd want to see my prediction on my label. End motion, we ship 30% of our orders, but our on-time delivery is only 18.9%. So a lot of different ways we can leverage Tableau CRM, a ton of use cases. I did want to, keep this part short because I do know a lot of us, again, come here for Tableau Server and desktop, and this might be, a whole new realm of knowledge here. But just be aware that you're just going to keep hearing more about Tableau CRM. It's just going to become more and more integrated with Tableau. So hopefully this was a good intro of what it is, how you'd use it, some of those use cases. And again, we can talk about learning more and how to get it when we get to our Q&A. But let's move on and let's get to our next demo, which is explain data, ask data, and natural language generation. And we're going to be looking at a provider use case here. So looking at length of stay. So length of stay, again, for anyone not familiar, I want to kind of give all of our verticals a little something here. So this metric is how long are patients staying in a hospital? We want this number to be low for a variety of reasons. So we're going to use AI to help us figure this out. And we're going to be doing that with explain data, ask data, and again, NLG. So let's jump into it. All right, so moving on to server. So we're going to start with this pretty self-explanatory monthly metrics, inpatient data, metrics tracker. And what we see here is length of stay has risen. So we want to understand why. Why is this happening? But we're not going to do this with dragging and dropping. We're going to do this completely self-service with AI built into Tableau. And again, these are the scenarios I was talking about earlier where you might be using AI already and not even realizing it. So we'll start with Ask Data. Now, Ask Data is not new. It's been around since early 2019. We're constantly improving it though. And let's talk about what is going on behind the scenes that's making this, an AI enhanced tool for us. So our algorithm profiles and indexes your data. It maps any synonyms. When I'm talking about synonyms, I mean attending MD. You might also be referred to a doctor, a physician, a clinician. So it maps those synonyms. And then it also suggests questions. So once your data is profiled, it generates questions that our model is thinking, hey, this might be a good starting point for you. But just like we mentioned earlier, that AI mimics the human mind, it understands conversational language. So if I were to ask a question that is very, very far from how I would structure a query, something like, which doctor saw the most patients, and we see that autofilling again, just like how your text message autofill works, same concept. Um, and here we have the right answer. So it's taking conversational language and processing it into a query, which is, incredibly powerful. Awesome. So Chuck Norris, obviously dummy data here, sees the most patients. But let's use one of those suggested questions around length of stay and start trying to dig into this problem here. So again, length of stay has been high for last month. Let's understand why. All right, so we have our doctors, how many patients are they seeing, and their length of stay opportunity. But we want to do a little more here. So I'm going to save this view, and we're just going to call this tug, length of stay. And we're going to do a little bit more here because now we're going to transition to explain data and talk about the AI behind explain data. So I use Ask Data to understand my initial question and get me to a starting point, which is these doctors and their length of stay metrics. And we're going to go into web edit mode now. And let's take a look, really get that pop of color. And this outlier here is really jumping out to me. Fantasia Barrino, her length of stay is really high. And she's also seeing a lot of patients. So I'm going to go to this little, looks like a little light bulb here, explain data. Let's see what that gives us. So what explain data is doing is it's a Bayesian statistic model. So it's calculating a z-score for this mark compared to marks in the view, as well as other fields not even in your view, which is really powerful. Imagine you have hundreds of fields. You don't have time to dig into each and every one and see, is there a big difference, significance? Well, explain data is doing that all for you. And it's doing that very quickly within just a few seconds. So once the model runs through the data, what it does, it then scores all the fields that have some significance, so some standard deviation that is significant compared to others, and then offers you a visual as well, and then explains those statistics in plain English. So if we were to look at Fantasia Barrino, we have all of the fields that the model detected as, hey, you might want to check this out. We do see some significance here. And sometimes I click through these and sometimes they're not that useful, or it's kind of self-explanatory, or it's a field that just as a business, as knowing the business, I know it doesn't really matter. But what I am seeing here, and this is another great aspect of explained data, is that extreme value. So because the model is able to run through all the fields, not just what's in the view, it detected that there was this admitting diagnosis, this brain injury, kind of a one-off scenario, not a typical encounter that really skewed her average. So really, yes, her length of stay is still high, but when we take out this extreme value, she's more in line with her other physicians. So let's actually save this view. and see how that changes things. So now she's not so much of an outlier, but David Duchovny is. So let's see what we get here. Because now we're starting to hone in on where our problem is. And we're going to use explain data again to see if explain data can tell us, what might be going on here. And again, we are detecting that it is an outlier, so that's good. We got that right. Now maybe, let's see what kind of patients he sees. And again, our David here, Dr. David, is the blue bar. So we can see he sees a lot of routine admissions, actually more routine admissions than the average of his fellow doctors. He's not seeing a lot of emergencies. In fact, he's seeing very little emergencies. So this tells me that, it's not because he's seeing a lot of, extreme outlier cases because they're emergencies. He's seeing a lot of routine patients, which is making me think that maybe there's a practice pattern issue that we need to address. He's doing something differently with how he sees his patients that his other doctors are not, that do this particular specialty, which is orthopedic surgery. So it looks like we're getting somewhere. Orthopedic surgery, David Duchovny, Dr. David, seems to be our problem child. Let's do a little more because we're going to make a dashboard and explain this story. And then we're going to use another type of AI to kind of test the two out. You'll see in a second here. So let me just get things in order here, kind of remove things we don't need. That looks good. All right, I'm going to duplicate this again, because we're trying to create a full picture here in just a couple minutes. So let's just filter to orthopedic surgery. Let's find that specialty, or where are you? There you are. All right. And let's take a look at some of the other doctors in this practice area, especially doctors who see a lot of patients, and see just how much of an outlier is David compared. Actually, let's take our top 10. We'll make it a little easier for us to see. Keep only. All right, now we can get rid of anything extra. So this is really showing me that Dr. David has a serious problem. So what explain data can also do for you is it can also tell you, what's part of the story that might not be in here. So it seems like we have an issue that's more related, again, to practice patterns. So I'm just going to clean this up. So we might want to say, okay, what is Dr. David doing that Edward Norton is doing differently? Why is he able to get his patients admitted and discharged so much faster than Dr. David? All right, we'll call this top 10 ortho. We're going to bring this all together on a dashboard, and then we're going to talk about natural language and then see, do we get the same results with a different AI model? So we're going to bring this all on. Again, not going to get too crazy with formatting, because what we really want to do is we're going to bring in natural language generation. We're going to do that with an extension again. So I'm going to bring on my extension. You guys are going to notice it looks a little different than the extension I brought on in desktop. That's because this is not a 21.1 server. So this is the way we are all doing it right now, not in beta. But I still need to configure that extension. So just like we did with our Einstein extension, we're just going to run through, pretty self-explanatory how to configure these extensions. This one's built by a partner. Let's get the important things. And what we're looking for here is, does this AI model, so we're doing the reverse, rather than asking a question in natural language, we're now wanting this model to output natural language from data. And we want to see, does this model get it right? Do we get the same results in a completely different model? And do we get some things we're not aware of? And it looks like we did get it right. So we detected David Duchovny length of stay opportunity is a significant outlier. Now, do we also catch orthopedic surgery? And let's see if we do. So David Duchovny, orthopedic surgery, there it is. So our other AI model using natural language generation found the outlier as well. So we did this in two ways, and we did it pretty quickly. So in 5 to 7 minutes, we made a dashboard. We used ask data and explain data to get there. And then we summarized our results with natural language generation, which is another aspect of AI that we can leverage in our everyday workflows. Awesome. Let's move on, and we're going to get to our last demo here. And this is focusing on our Tableau desktop out-of-the-box AI capabilities. We're going to use clustering, which is, again, unsupervised ML to partition those like marks, create a cluster. And we're also going to quickly talk about forecasting. We use an exponential smoothing model. And again, that is out of the box as well, which you can do some tweaking if necessary. Our use case here is for physician spend and revenue. So let's say we were just talking about orthopedic surgery. Let's say I come in to my doctor and he says, okay, you need surgery on your arm, whatever it may be, but there's 5 or 7 hospitals in the area. How do we get the patients to come to us? Because again, that's how providers make a lot of their money. It's with these surgeries. So that means we might need to, outreach to our physicians in the area, spend a little marketing money, do a little outreach, but margins are thin. So we want to make sure we spend our money in the right area. So we're going to use clustering to help us find that cohort of doctors that we need to focus our marketing money on. All right, so again, this is a quick demo, but definitely worth showing because clustering is so easy to use. So size of the dot is the number of patients being sent to our provider. X-axis is growth, so obviously positive growth means they're sending us a lot of patients. Negative means, we used to see patients from this doctor, but then they stopped sending them to us, so that's not good. So let's use a cluster to find, well, what are those doctors that we either maybe have an outreach to them, they might be new to the area, or they might have recently fell off with referrals and we can still reclaim them. So somewhere kind of in here. I mean, sure, we could kind of ad hoc and just grab them and hope for the best, but it'd be even better if we could use real math to define that for us. So on my analytics tab, we have a couple models here. We're going to use our clustering model. And again, just like everything we do in Tableau, it's simple dragging and dropping. And again, clustering isn't new. Clustering's been around, but again, because we're talking about AI, it's certainly worth covering today. So what's great is you can define the variables that make up your clusters. In this case, we're just going to take what's in our view, which is profit and revenue. Everything else doesn't really matter. Nope, don't want you there. And you can also say how many clusters you want. Do I want 5? Do I want 4? Let's go with 4. And this looks pretty good. So if I'm looking at this and interpreting these clusters, I'd say, well, cluster number 4, I don't need to worry about them. These doctors are sending us a lot of patients and not really worth our marketing spend. Cluster 3, they fell off. They're really negative. It's going to cost us a lot more money to get those referrals back. Cluster 2, well, our growth is really positive. So whatever we're doing, it's working, might not really be worth our marketing money. But cluster number 1, well, here is our sweet spot. Not really sending us a lot of patients, haven't really sent us a lot of patients. They might be, again, new practitioners, new to the area. This is where we want to spend our marketing money. All right. One of the reasons I also wanted to show this example is because we actually ran this exact data through a manual R model, and we got nearly identical results. So the math behind this clustering outputted the same results as a human data science model. So that was a pretty cool, vindicating little test that we did. Last up, this is a quick one, just to be aware that you also have built-in forecasting. Again, this is not new, it's been around, but we can talk about what's going on, underneath the hood. So just where we were a minute ago, right above the clustering is the forecast. And just like that, drag it on, we could project out, what are our profits for the next 6 months, the next year. What I often see is people will kind of just drop it on and then call it a day, which is totally fine, but just be aware that you do have your options to define this forecast. Maybe we want to go a year out. Defined, we want seasonality. trends, seasons. Again, probably more for the stats-minded people, but just be aware you have those options. And I've also gotten the question before, like, oh, well, can I see those in actual numbers rather than just trended visually? And yes, you certainly can bring in those forecasted upper and lower projections as a crosstab as well. All right, so a lot of demos, a lot to think about. Kind of looking at the clock, we're actually right on time to talk about what's new. So why don't we do a quick recap of what's new, what's coming? We could do a couple questions, and then I'll turn it over to our next speaker. Okay, so we typically would do a whole set of demo of what's new, what's coming, but we don't really have time for that today. And you actually saw quite a bit of what's coming in the first half of our demos today. So let's also talk about what else you have coming down the pipeline. So usually at the top, that's like our marquee showstoppers for the release. So clearly, no surprise, those Einstein discovery, that Tableau CRM that we spent the first 10, 15 minutes talking about is really the big ticket item here. Getting Einstein discovery in Tableau with that extension and also using that model inside of Tableau as a calculation, which you guys also saw going to the model in Salesforce, just copy and pasting that code and plopping it into a calc window. So you guys actually already saw quite a bit. You also saw our new gallery for extensions. So you saw the old way and the new way. Obviously, the old way is a lot nicer, where we just see visually those extensions and we just click on them and they're automatically added to our dashboard. So that's also what's coming in 21.1. What else people are excited about, and what's great is our what's coming website makes my job easier because we have a little GIF, which is practically a demo in itself. So level of detail calcs have historically been kind of confusing for users to create. They have those funny little curly brackets, and just in general, they usually, I don't know, take a little bit of a practice to get used to them. Well, we're making it easier now to create them, just dragging and dropping a measure on top of a dimension, and you'll get an LOD. Really similar to anyone who's making hierarchies. You're just using a measure instead. In server, we're getting enhanced notifications in our next release. So we have alerts. That's been around for a while, but nobody's really using them that much. They're not very actionable, and then sometimes they're just not very clear what the update is. So very soon you all are going to see a much improved alert notification experience. Again, the updates will be very clear. They'll be actionable. So if you click like, oh, somebody shared this, you'll be brought right to it. And look out for that. The other exciting update, there's no video for this one, but the piece of this that I am most excited about, that I get this question pretty often helping people, and it's a subtle one, but you can now reorder headers below the viz. I know it seems simple, but I'm sure some of us here have noticed your headers sometimes get stuck at the top. Now you can put them below, especially with dates, and just an improved scrolling experience, reordering. So look out for that as well. And again, I'm kind of picking out the ones here that are more analyst focused, not so much IT or really specific to, say, a database. But let's talk about prep real quick. Any prep users here, we can now output our flows to Excel. So last year we got outputting to a database, which people were super excited about, but then we heard, oh, but I also really want to be able to output to prep to Excel as well. So we have that coming out in our latest prep version. And lastly here, let's talk about metrics. Some metrics came out about this time last year. Really great, easy way to track and create those KPIs that update automatically. But if you went to a worksheet or a viz, you wouldn't know if a metric was attached to it or not. You could do the reverse. If you landed on a metric, you could say, oh, this is from this workbook. But now when you land on a viz and you open up the metrics panel, you'll see those metrics that are attached to that workbook, which can be handy. And you could, again, favorite it for yourself if you'd like. So you'll see that enhancement as well. A couple other things, but I think those are the main ones that, the everyday business Tableau developer or server user will be using. So we've got a lot in there. And now you guys all know what this Einstein discovery is. I know there's probably still a lot of questions around that, but I think we're at a perfect stopping point to hand it over for about 5 or so minutes for questions before we turn it over to our next presenter. So I'm going to check the chat. I did not see any questions come through, but I might have just not missed them. All right. So if you have any questions, you can type them here and I can prompt that. All right. And you could also, I believe, take yourself off mute if you'd prefer to ask in person. But yeah, you could ask away anything you saw today or really anything about Tableau. Even if it's a general question, we can answer that for you because we have about 5 minutes or so to do that. All right. Any questions? And I will, again, stay on the line here for a minute. Integrating Tableau with TabPy. Yep, that's a good question. So there is, obviously you need to install TabPy. So typically when we have users bringing TabPy scripts into Tableau, they already have a background with Tableau. So what you would do is you'd bring in your script like a calculation. It would actually look very, very similar to something like this that we were just talking about. You'd wrap your code in a script. It'd be grabbing those those Python specific functions, and then you bring it in like a calculation. But that's okay. So that's for Tableau Desktop. You would need to enable it to the server under your external connections. So you need to, again, be able to have your server, have the TabPy server listening. That's the TabPy component. So I have this connected to Einstein. If I disabled it, I'd see my TabPy connection. And we have a lot of resources on that as well. So TabPy, Tableau, and a lot of example scripts also that walks you through it. Again, most people do have a little bit of Python background when they bring these scripts in. But yeah, this is that external connection I was talking about. So you do need to configure that. Once you get that done, bring your scripts in. You're pretty much good to go. Okay, and I'll put this into the chat as well. We have a few other resources. All right, question about the forecasting model. Yep. So the forecasting model is an exponential smoothing model. And we'll come back here. Let me move this. And when you right click, you do have some options for how you want it to behave. And again, I didn't spend too much time here. And again, you can't get super precise as if you were writing it yourself. Out of the box, you can define the length, how many months, and then you can customize it to automatic. That's default. I actually did change it to custom. I think that was just, I forgot to change it back. Or you could have seasonality. So, do you see certain times where the trend is affected? But if we go to custom, you can define additive or multiplicative with seasonality. Now, I'll be totally honest, I'm not stats proficient enough to tell you exactly the difference between these two. But just, be aware that it's there. You can also see, just like the clustering, you can also describe the forecast. So again, for anyone here who has more of a stats background, this probably makes more sense to you than it does for someone like myself. That's why I'm the perfect Tableau CRM user, right? So yeah, Janina, let me know if that helps answer your question about forecasting. But yeah, it's pretty out of the box for what you get with that model. Let me change it back to automatic. Most of our users stick with automatic to get that forecasting. All right. And be aware with forecasting as well that you do need enough data to use it. So if you drag it on and you get no results, it probably just means there's not enough data to generate the forecast. So that's kind of a common pitfall you could run into. So just be aware of that. All right. Any other questions out there? And again, it could be what you saw today or just really anything about Tableau. Will the model be available in a view in future rather than having to be selected? I might need a little more clarity on that question, Dimitri. Are you talking about the forecasting model or just in general? Because what you can do is sometimes our captions can give us some indicators, but what you're seeing here, again, you could describe it, but that's about as much viewing. Let me know if you want to explain more. I might not be totally grasping your question. Apologies. All right, while some questions are coming through, just a note about the 21.1 release. We are hoping to see this drop any day now. So just be aware that we do keep this website, what's coming soon, updated. So once 21.1 drops, again, should be very soon. In a couple weeks, you're going to see coming soon for 21.2. So be on the lookout there. Okay, again, I'll give another second, see if there's any other questions. Okay, yes. Okay, here we go, Dimitri. Okay, when I see the R2 value as part of the tooltip or view. Okay, I gotcha now. Okay, so the question is about really seeing more of the math behind the model here. So what I would suggest in this case, sorry, let me move this, is you can copy this, what's going on with the model, a summary or the model itself. I think you mentioned the R squared. So let's just go with this one. I can copy it. I've actually never done this, so let's see if this works. And let's see if we could add this to the tooltip. Oh, okay. Kind of comes out a little funny, but I think you could probably bring that text outside. So maybe we wouldn't do it there at first, but we could bring it into maybe the caption and then take what we care about. Yeah, so something like that, and then just like clean it up. So I think there's some ways we could do that. So not super clean, but you could get there. Yeah, static, right? Okay, another question from Mark. You mentioned a Salesforce license when needed to utilize Tableau CRM. Is that an individual to create the model or for all Tableau users? Yeah, great question. And I was expecting this to come up. So this is definitely a conversation you'd want to have with your account manager. We are, and again, don't hold me to this because this could always change. We are releasing our pricing guidance that it's $25 per user. And that would require for the person creating the model and the person viewing. So let's say you had 25 people that were going to interact and view this dashboard. Those 25 people would also need the Tableau CRM license. But again, talk to your account reps about that because, there's a chance you might already have it or, there's always some things going on behind the background, but again, that's our basic guidance on licensing at the moment. Cool. Great questions. What extensions are needing to use Einstein? Yep. So this is in 21.1. So so if you're trying to test this out and you're on any version not 21.1, you're not going to see the Einstein extension, so just be aware of that. But when you drag it in, so extensions, just go ahead, drag it in. I'm just going to put it anywhere. And it should come up at the top, quick access, but you could also search for it. It's that Einstein discovery. So it's pretty easy to find. Yep, and then you just bring it on in. But again, be aware that you do need to have the models created in Einstein, which I showed you briefly. That was right here. So it will detect the models when you sign in to your org, and that's how you bring them in. So if you don't have any models, you're going to just see nothing. But yep, that's what there is. Cool. Thanks, guys. Good questions. And I will be on the line. So even as we're continuing today's tug, if you have a question, you could also plop it into the chat and I'll see it and I'll get to you.
Great questions and really interesting presentation. Thanks, Jessica, for sharing this great live demos. Looking forward to more integration of CRM with the Tableau server. That will be really powerful combination for AI and easy deployment of models. Ask data is awesome. I'm wondering why we are in rush still not using it. Thanks for the interesting presentation.
Thanks, Imran.
Uh,
Thanks, everyone.
Now the next presenter is Ashok Verma Bongo. He's a senior data architect in Rush. He's working in the healthcare analytics from last 10 years and working with Rush from last 5 years. Handing over to Ashok. Ashok, I think you are still mute.
Oh, sorry. This is I normally don't join on Zoom, so I'm not aware of these options. Yeah, thanks, Imran, for the introduction. So we'll start. Can you see my desktop? Can everyone see my desktop before I start?
Yes, I can see.
Yeah, thanks. So my presentation is around the use cases that we have used for use Tableau as our visualization or dashboarding tool. And Tableau is living up to our expectations and our needs at Rush. So I will walk you through one of the use cases that we have done. And as many of the participants here are into healthcare, they understand like how vaccination is driving the healthcare now and how much preference is given to this vaccination. So we'll go with what we have at Rush. So I'm Ashok. I'm a senior architect at Rush, and I deal with Epic reporting and data sciences. And I have a lot of experience working on the BI, like data warehousing. I have been into many tools and many visualization tools. And I have experience on the Epic side, like on the workflows and on the, and on the business domain and, on the data science as well. About Rush, so Rush has been charted on 1837, and we have around 900 providers and 11,000 inpatient beds. Rush system has 3 hospitals. One is Rush University Medical Center, the other is Ashok Park and Rush Copley. And Rumsey is our biggest hospital. It has close to 700 inpatient beds. And Rush University also has a medical school and a nursing school and healthcare sciences. Like it has a master's program in, they call it as HSM. So a lot of education happening at Rush as well. So now going to the presentation. So we were talking about COVID vaccination dashboards. So how it came up as a challenge and what are the needs and how we arrived at this is like, if I take you to a couple of needs, the leadership at Rush needs an overall big picture, how vaccination is going on and how, like, as you know, vaccination is done in phases, like 1A, 1B, 1C, 2. So we want to see how each phase is doing, how many are we vaccinating, and how many appointments do we have. So we definitely need an overall big picture. And the downside of Epic is, or the hyperspace we call them, is it doesn't really give you those trends, and the visualizations are not so good at Epic hyperspace. So there is a need for us to give a very big picture, and that's one of our major asks from leadership. And then there are community reach initiatives where we want scheduling data, administration data, and they want to see how our community reach initiatives are doing. And there is ask from the pharmacy. They want to see how the supply is against the scheduled dosages, like is our supply more or is our supply less than our scheduled dosages. So they get alerted like how to plan for the next few dosages. And operations is a set of team like who look after this administration process, like the vaccine. So they always have to identify the next set of patients and then reach out to them to schedule. And as everyone know, like once we do all these vaccinations and administrations, we have to report this data to the city of Chicago and to the federal, so that the state and federal has an idea how many are we really doing administrations and how the vaccination is going on at Rush. So with all these needs, we wanted to make a central dashboard, and the reason being having a central dashboard is we don't want to do double counting. Like, we don't want to adopt a new process of counting for external reporting while we are reporting a different number to the pharmacy. So we wanted to build some data marts where the data is stored at a central place, and then we want to make dashboards out of it. And we want to make sure that all these pharmacy dashboards will talk to the leadership dashboard. So these all numbers should be reconciled, and there's no double counting. So when you go into the challenges, right? So these are all the challenges we have. So sometimes our patients does get vaccinated externally, but they report to Rush that he has got already vaccinated. So what we do is we do not send him, or we do not send him a ticket to schedule, or we do not want to, bother him again with outreach initiatives. So there is the outside administrations. We have a data set somewhere else. We have an outpatient administration, which like we have vaccine clinics. The patient walks in, he makes an appointment, and then he gets an administration, he goes. It's just a 15-minute thing. And in the inpatient side, so someone who is likely having more comorbidities and he's an inpatient side. So while during the discharge, we have the provision that, we can identify that he's one of the 1B or 1C patients, and we can give him the vaccine at the time of discharge, so that he doesn't need to come to the hospital again. So all these administrations are happening at multiple places, multiple workflows. So one of the challenges is, you have to get this data and then make it in the central place. And workflows are changing very often because we are having new deadlines. Like we have a new deadline that all adults, will have vaccination available by May 1. So with all these decisions making, there's a lot of workflow changes happening. And you have to clean the data because we are getting data from outside. So that is not the same format with all the external data. So some, like you have data from Loyola, you have data from Northwestern, so they don't send it in the same format. So you'll have data cleansing that needs to be done. And the biggest thing is there's no double counting, that we have to look into the data set. And once this all thing is done, now comes to the effective visualization, because we have reporting in Epic Hyperspace, and we have other kinds of reporting like crystal reports and all, but how does this visualization or this dashboard help us in giving more than what others are not giving? So visualization is really an important task for us, and we wanted to see what the needs are and how we can do better visualization with the data. So no one wants to really dig into like 1,000 patients and see what they are and what they are doing. Like when you get the overall picture, it's all about visualization. It's very important for us, how do we do effective visualization. And Tableau is a reporting tool, as I said, a dashboarding tool. So we took this approach to visualize our data in Tableau. And And we came up with a pretty awesome dashboard. And there's a lot of appreciation that came from the senior leadership, the way we have presented the data. So now I'm going to demo that thing. I'm going to show you how our Tableau looks like. Can you see my browser now, where it is refreshing the data? Yeah, so thanks, Imran. So this is how our dashboard looks like. It is still loading some of these filters. Yeah. So if you see, we made one workbook, and on the asks that we have one each tab for each of them. Like we have a pharmacy tab, we have the patients tab, and we have a summary tab for leadership. So it all depends on who is asking and how we want to present the data. So the most important one, or the most used one out of this workbook, is the patients one, which is like, as I said, we have 3 hospital systems, and this dashboard that you are seeing is for RUMC and ROPH. So whoever are the patients of RUMC and ROPH, you can see this thing. And so impressive part from our side was we were able to take away the filters at a patient level and at dose level, because we know that the vaccine is a 2-dose level, and someone can take the first dose at Rush, and they can take the second dose at Walgreens or somewhere else. So it's important for us to determine which are at the dose level and which are at the patient level. And if you see, this is how the numbers looks like. And these many have completed, these many are scheduling pending, these many do not have a ticket. And if you see the rate of the percentages, this is a donor chart, which is mostly used or mostly viewed, I would say. So you change these filters, all these filters, and so if you see, some of the interesting filters are like cancer patient. So if you want to look at the cancer patient, you just select one of these filters. Like if you want to do non-cancer, then 0. If you want to do a cancer, you select 1, and accordingly all these graphs will be changed. And so if you scroll down, you'll have a lot of trending charts, like the administered by week and dose, scheduled appointments by week and dose. So you will see some weeks have a lot of scheduling and some weeks doesn't have. And by gender, you have doses, you have dose 1, you have dose 2, and you have by race and ethnicity. And this graph is one of the most asked graphs, I would say. So leadership wants to see how is the vaccine happening by zip code, by dose 1 and dose 2. Like you select the dose 1, you'll get the picture for dose 1, and you can zoom in, zoom out. This is all because we are using Tableau at the back. You can see these maps, and you can see how many as the patient count and how many, what is the zip code and which zip codes are we vaccinating more. If you see the dark blue ones, these are the locations where our hospitals are. So you'll see most of them are coming from this zip code, and this totally makes sense to us. So similarly, by vaccines administered and vaccines allocated, and similar kind of stuff, we have a lot of population. So you have age, and you have total ticket. And this visualization around map is for the scheduling pending and no ticket. So we send out a lot of tickets to the patients, and the workflow is, once you have a ticket, you schedule an appointment. Now we want to see, we have around a lot of patients who are not scheduling, and we want to see where our patients are not scheduling from the most. And if you see, these graphs help us to understand what those trends are, and it will help us to determine what our next course of action is. Like when we want to send out the next course of tickets, we really don't want to send them to the red one, because we always know that this zip code is not really scheduling tickets, though we are sending them. It could be because there's a nearby vaccination center, or there could be, there is some outreach happening in this community. Probably they are using that outreach rather than, getting tickets from the rush. So there's a lot of insight that we will get it from these maps, and accordingly, the strategies are moving or adjusting. And I will also show you, so we all know that, the vaccination is happening in phases. Like you have first internal 1A, and then we move to external 1A, and there is 1B, and now we are transitioning to 1C. So if you want to see how your population is doing, this is where other filters are. You have internal 1A, external 1A, and this is 1B. So all these patient level filters or dose level filters are driven by the business needs and how we are reporting to external agencies and all. So we also gave the filters like at a specific MRN. So someone wants to do troubleshooting, they can enter that MRN and see how that specific MRN is doing. Like, are we reporting the right ones or not? And you always have this date as of, so that the business user does know that if the Tableau dashboard is refreshed today or if it is not refreshed today. And one another thing, we always get questions is like, what is this appointment completed? What is this appointment schedule? So to answer those questions, what we have said is, so every dashboard will have metric definitions. So you click this metric definition, you'll have one each, word. You have a definition around what these actually mean by. Like if you say dose on final status, appointment completed, this is what your definition around. So having these metric definitions, having date of as of date really solved some of those end user related questions, because they always want to see if the dashboard is updated and what these definitions mean. I would say one of our standard practices at Rush is, for every dashboard we do, we have the metric definitions and we have the data as of thing. That concludes my presentation. I'm open for any Q&A. You can ask me either by chat, or you can unmute and you can ask me.
This is Tamara. This is fabulous. This is Tamara with Tableau Software. This is really great. I know you talked about the different data sources, but could you run through what data sources you used again?
Awesome. So the data source is only Epic, but what happens is in Epic there is a module called like Epic Care Everywhere, which allows you to get external data from other organizations, like from other hospitals. So I mean, it's again at the patient level. So when the patient authorizes, the medical information gets shared through this module to Epic itself. But technically what happens is, even though it lands in Epic hyperspace, these internal data is in a different workflow or a different set of tables, and your external data is in a different set of tables or different workflows. So it is very hard to clean the data, because when, like say, Lella sends the external data through Care Everywhere, they use a different format, or they they use different things, like maybe their spelling is wrong, or all these things will happen. So and when Northwestern sends, they use a different format. So even though the external data is landing into the same set of tables, the hardest part is you have to clean the data and you have to use it in a similar fashion where your organization data is also having,
Okay. Thank you so much. This is really great.
Thank you.
Super job. Thank you for everything you're doing to help.
Hey, Ashok, this is Jess, and kind of following up on Tamara's question. So, because we work with our customers with Epic a lot, and like you said, sometimes the data cleaning can be tough. Are you piping it into a SQL database and then cleaning it in an external tool?
Yeah, that's a good question. So what we do is, so when you get the data into Epic EMR, right?
Mhm.
But the external data is in a different workflow, and this is in a different workflow. All this data, they have a nightly load. So whatever is there in the front end, Epic EMR, it goes to relational database in SQL Server.
Mhm.
So now your data is already in SQL Server, but these are in different places and different tables, and the data is in a different format. Now what we have done is we have created a data mart in a different database. Now for that database, we have different sources. One is your external data is in different set of tables. So you will use a different format to load that into your data mart. And your internal data is in a different set of tables in different format. So you use a different process to load into the same data mart. So you're doing the data cleaning in the SQL Server, but your database is lying in a different server or in a different database than what your source system is. Source system is in a different database, and your destination data tables are in a different database. So we are doing cleaning while transferring data from this one to this one.
Okay. So it sounds like the biggest kind of challenge with making the dashboard was really the data aspect. Did you run into any challenges like creating the dashboard itself, or was it really once the data got figured out, it was pretty off to the races from there?
So most of the challenges is around so some of the challenges we were doing was how to, using the maps.
Okay.
So we wanted to, we have a zip code, and so sometimes the zip code is not a 5-digit format. And if it is a 5-digit format, hyphen, and then you have 4-digit or something, right? So sometimes the Tableau, I don't know if it is able to determine that more than 5-digit format or not, but I think we saw some issues around it. And then what we have done is we cleaned the data just to a 5-digit format, and Tableau was picking up everything.
Okay.
That's one of the things I think we came up across.
Okay,
and what else we got into?
Well, it looks great. And I also noticed that it performed very quickly. So I can tell that there was a lot of work done to get to that endpoint, and awesome job.
Thank you. Another thing was the performance issues. As you see, we were talking about 140,000 patients, and we have a lot of graphs. And there was one more table at the very bottom, which will give you the details in a table format. So when we started with this thing, it used to take a lot of time for us just to refresh the dashboard. You choose one filter among another filter and you apply. It takes considerable, a few seconds to load the new set of values. But later we figured out if we take away the detail table, which is coming at the very bottom, then the performance has increased. And currently we are going with that approach, because for the end user, it really makes important for him. Whenever they choose filters, if it takes a lot of time, it won't be appealing for him. So for that performance thing, we have to readjust a couple of things. But that's one thing, because as we go forward, we will have a lot of other visualizations. And if the performance is really not that level where we wanted to, we would really like to talk to Tableau for their support and see if something we can do to improve the performance.
Okay, yep, definitely can help there.
Hello, Ashok. Imran here. You mentioned you are receiving some data from other institute. Are the institute using a file or any kind of format, or just different format from every institute?
So for now, that's a good question. Like going forward, what we wanted to do was this thing. Like we wanted to see if if other organizations, like if we want to exchange data for the vaccination from other organizations, then 5 would be our format. But for now, in this case, we are not doing it. It's just about the Epic EMR. And this is not something that we have done. It's an existing thing, like any record from other organizations. If the patient authorizes, it will get to Epic EMR for that patient. And the transfer between these two is mostly dealt by Epic with its module. So behind the scenes, it's happening a lot. Probably HL7 is what it is, or the XML file is what it is happening at the back end.
Makes sense. Thank you.
Any questions on the dashboard? Yeah. Thanks everyone for patiently listening to me. And you always know if you have any questions, you can reach out to us. And I'm gonna share my contact details. Okay. So you can reach out to us if you see the presentation. This is my email ID and Imran's email ID. Yeah, feel free to reach out to us for any questions you have.
Thank you, Ashok. Go ahead.
Go ahead. Thanks. Thanks. That's all I have. Over to you.
Sounds good. Thank you, Ashok, for the live demo and sharing the COVID vaccine dashboard with us. Understanding the right workflow of a COVID vaccine in such a unique condition of pandemic is a key challenge in creating this very essential dashboard. It really helps to understand which area needs more vaccine. I could clearly see with the west and south side of community needs more vaccine. This is really essential dashboard to make the strategies to fight with this pandemic. Thank you for your work and creating this dashboard and sharing with us. Being this said, we are done with our meeting agenda. If you have any other questions or any concerns, please let us know. If you have any new ideas about the next Tableau presentation or talk, please reach out to me or Kelly, and we would love to hear from you what you guys are doing in your organization and how you are using the Tableau, and we can learn from each other.
Yes, like what Imran said, we're always looking for presenters, and we love to hear about what's going on in our community and what people are working on. Or if you have any just general Tableau questions that you'd like to hear about in more detail, we can, and have like a presentation idea that way, we can definitely connect with Tableau and see what we can present about. And these presentations will be posted on our page. And if you have any questions that come up afterwards, because that always happens to me, feel free to post them on our group page. And thank you all for coming, and especially to our presenters, Jessica and Ashok. That was great content and very relevant. So it's always good to hear.
Thanks, Kelly and Imran, for organizing.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great rest of the day.
Bye, you too.
Bye. Thank you.